Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and we're continuing with our series on meeting the women of WOAMTEC, women on a mission to earn commission. And our guest this evening is Cindy Moore, who is a real estate agent and owns her own company. That's a pretty good job.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the real estate business?
Almost 11 years now.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you must like it to put it up with that long, yeah.
Yes, I started with Caldwell Banker in the Beverly office, worked there for 3 years, went over to another company in Peabody called Beverly Realty Group. They're mostly a commercial brokerage, and I worked with them for a few years, and then I decided to go out on my own. So.
Yeah. And you said you got a team. How many people work with you?
When I talk about team, I just started my company last November. Okay. So when I talk about team, there's a couple reasons that I use that word. One is, say you wanted to list your house. Yeah. You would work with me. I would bring a team of people to the table to help us, whether it be a mortgage broker or a closing attorney or an inspector or whatever you would need for your home. A contractor, an electrician, any of that kind of stuff. So you would work with me as a team. Right now,
so you're the team leader, and
I'm the team leader. Yeah,
and it's your job to go out and find the right people.
I have the right people already because I've been in it long enough to know that I have those people behind me to help me.
Okay.
I was approached by somebody last week that wants to maybe come and work with me, and I will have some people that work underneath me. I just haven't gotten that far yet. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good start. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Again, as we were talking before, and I haven't bought a house in quite a while, and the market is different and the process is different. So could you walk us through, what does it take? Somebody comes into your office and says, I want to buy a house. What happens next?
The first thing I would tell them is that they need to go get pre-approved. I really don't work with any buyers unless they're pre-approved because I don't want to show them a house that's too expensive that they can't afford, and I also don't want to show them something that is too inexpensive. We want to get that number right first. So the first thing for them to do is to go see a mortgage broker, and then once they have their pre-approval, then we know what they can afford to buy, and then we start watching the market. It really depends on what their time frame is and how quickly they need something to buy. But so we would put them on an MLS search. That's usually one of the first things that I do. Say, okay, what towns are you looking to live in? And we know your price range, how many beds and baths, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. If you want something like a garage or a pool or some things that people might want. Yeah. So we would narrow it down in the search and we would start looking. And then I would be putting my feelers out for people that I know off market as well. So we both look on market and then we try to get it out to the people that we know for off market deals. Because I have done quite a few of those, and it's really great for the seller and the buyer. If the seller says, I want X amount for my house, and I bring a buyer in that's going to give them a full price offer, that we don't have to deal with, going up against, 5 or 6 other offers. Mm-hmm. So it's great for the seller if they don't want people in and out of their home. And for the buyer, they have a very stress-free deal.
Well, a little bit more. What is this off market? I understand that, brokers get listings and they've got houses they know that somebody wants to sell because they're moving out or downsizing.
Yep.
But how do you find somebody that's off market?
So people will come to me and they'll say, I need to sell my mother's house, but I don't want to go through the rigmarole of open houses and all of that. So if they don't want to go on the market, obviously the best pricing is going to be if you do go on the market. But a lot of people are like, if I can get X amount for my house, I'm happy with that. And if you can find me a buyer so that we don't have to go through the craziness of open houses and multiple offers. Some people don't want to do that. It's not everyone, but it does happen. I did that with a house in Saugus, and I was able to get a buyer that had lost out on 7 houses because going through COVID was completely crazy. But they ended up getting that house, and the seller got their price, and the buyer was super happy, and it was a great transaction.
Yeah. It must have been fairly easy back in the days of COVID to get a broker to come up with a mortgage because the rates were so much better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, honestly, the lower rates that we had during COVID actually really are hurting the housing market because everyone has such low rates that they don't really want to move. They don't want to lose their rates.
Yeah.
Another thing that COVID did that I noticed quite a bit was going into houses post-COVID. I've never seen so many homes that were updated because people were at home.
Oh, yeah.
They weren't doing a lot. They were, okay, let's put some money into our house. Kitchens and baths and stuff are definitely more updated now than they were before the pandemic. So
Yeah. I noticed the difference. Like one of my stocks that I own is Home Depot.
Yep.
They did very, very well.
they did well, yeah.
And Lowe's was also doing well. So, that brought out the handyman.
Yes.
And handy women too, and anything.
Yep.
Yeah, anybody can swing a hammer that did something. So, okay, you're talking about a change in rates. What kind of a change happened? What kind of rates were you getting back in the free money days?
Yeah, you could get anywhere from 2 to 3%. I myself had a rate of, I think, like 3.5%. I did end up going for a 5.5% so that I could pull money out of my own house to do my own kitchen over. And people were telling me I was crazy back then, but now they would not say that to me because the rates are a lot higher than that. But now they're a lot of the rates are under 7, not much under 7.
Yeah.
But I've even seen some rates on a 20-year fixed, even in the mid 6s. So they're starting to come down. Although I don't think they're going to come down a lot more. But I don't have a crystal ball. But
Well, one of the things is the very first house I bought got an FHA mortgage. They still have those?
they do. Yeah.
So-
FHA mortgages are they're all over the place. They're really great for people that might have a little bit of issues with their credit.
Yeah.
But they do have some stipulations.
What kind of a rate can you get with the FHA?
The FHA rates are not too far off the regular conventional rates, but it's not my lane. Mortgages are not my lane. I
Okay.
kind of stake in the real estate lane, but I do work with. I probably have 10 mortgage officers that I could call at any one time to help with a client. Like when I send my client to go see a mortgage officer, I kind of leave that up to them and the mortgage officer to figure out. But I mean, I have to have an understanding of it, of course.
Yeah,
but.
so you have certain brokers that you work with and you recommend the client go talk to this particular broker because you know what kind of service they can get.
Yes. I usually give more than one and let the client make the decision. So I like to give no more than 3 because then it just gets confusing
Yeah.
for them. So
Yeah. Again, I keep thinking back to when I bought my house. I never even talked to a broker. I just talked to the real estate agent and they said, okay, this is what we can do. And
some people go to a broker and some people just go to their regular bank
yeah.
and work with their bank. So it really depends on the individual.
Yeah, that was the problem I had, that I was new to the area, had no idea what banks were available, what brokers were available, and the real estate agent took care of everything, so it was sort of a magic trip.
Huh.
Yeah, and I guess the world is different now. You get a house, got to get an inspector,
Yep.
because the banks won't buy the mortgage unless you have it inspected, and you have to get, I guess, insurance on it too.
Yes. I have an interesting story that just happened to me this past month. I have a 2-family home in Peabody that I had on the market. It went under agreement. The buyer ended up not being able to get finance, so we went back on the market. It was at no fault of mine or the seller. It's just sometimes you don't meet the most reputable people in real estate sometimes, but. So we went back on the market. The second buyer, we got under agreement very quickly. And when they did the inspection, they found out that the sills, so on top of the foundation, there are sills, right?
Yeah.
And these were, wood sills.
Yeah.
And the house was built in the 1900s. So the second inspection told us that the sills were damaged and they need to be replaced. So I went back to my seller. They ended up walking. The second buyer was not interested in dealing with the sales situation. So I went back to my seller and said, I now know this information, and we did have another buyer that was going to waive inspection, and they said, well, how about if we go back to them, because they didn't want to have an inspection. And I told them that unfortunately I wouldn't be able to do that. I could go back to that buyer, but I have to tell them that there's a material fact in the home.
Yeah.
So there was another offer that is a better offer than that one that waived inspection. So I called the other agent and told them, okay, so this is what happened. We went through an inspection. We found out that the sills are compromised. I had a contractor come that day and give me a price of, what it would cost to fix the sills.
Yeah.
And I told the client that, and we were under agreement that night.
Oh, wow.
So it happened very quickly, and we were doing the right thing, being honest about everything we needed to do, and the sale is going to close on the 22nd of this month. So, not all, just like in any trade that you go to, not everyone is the most ethical sometimes, but my taglines are honesty, integrity, and commitment, and I hold those very dear to my heart. And that's just an example of, doing the right thing and being able to sleep at night for both my sellers, the buyers, and myself.
Yeah.
So,
and if you had let this go through and say, oh, it's okay, nothing's wrong, they're going to find out about it sooner or later. And that's when it gets exciting and the lawyers get involved.
Yep.
And I guess that gets to be a big part of the action of, it ain't what you said you were selling me, it's different.
Well, that happened a lot. I've heard quite a few stories post-pandemic about people that bought during the pandemic, and waiving inspection was a regular thing back then.
Yeah.
So, it's not a good idea. I don't recommend it. Although when you're in a pricing war with other people, sometimes people were doing that. But
You have to take the risk.
you do. But if you're taking the risk, I tell people when you go to do the walkthrough on the home, like when you're first looking at it, bring a contractor with you if you're going to do that, because they would have seen the sills and they would have known. It was not brought to my attention until it was brought on the inspection. But now, as a realtor and a broker and somebody who has integrity, you have to let people know. The problems that are with the home. I mean, the seller lost some money off the selling price, but it's better than going into litigation a year later when they found out the problem. So
that gets to be very messy and very expensive.
Yep.
Now
it's not good for anyone.
Now you're paying for lawyers on top of everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess it's pretty much de rigueur that you have to have an inspection on a house just to get the mortgage.
That would be an appraisal. So the mortgage company does the appraisal that makes sure that you're not overpaying for the house.
Well, what's the difference between an appraisal and an inspection?
So the inspection comes, your first contingency when you go under contract is going to be your inspection contingency. So they want to just make sure that the house doesn't have any major problems, like having the sills be a problem. Yeah. So once it goes to inspection, like there might be certain things that the client says, okay, well, maybe the electrical needs to be updated. Maybe the electrical panel is, got too many plugs in it for the panels as big as the panel is. So then the buyer client would negotiate with the seller and try to work out those problems, if you will. So, and then once that's done, and you go to P&S, and then
what's P&S?
Purchase and sale.
Okay.
And then you would have the bank come and do an appraisal, and that's just to make sure that you're not paying too much for the property. They're only going to give you a loan for the amount that the house appraises out at.
Yeah, because they're basing it on that you're going to default on the mortgage, and they're going to take over the property, and now they got to sell it.
Right.
And they have to make sure that it's got a price on it that covers the outstanding mortgage. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
During COVID, and even today, if there is a price war on a house, let's say it sells $80,000 over asking, chances are it's not going to appraise if it's that big of an increase. So a lot of times, what the agent that's listing the house will have the buyer agent put in the contract that they will pay in cash the difference between the appraisal price and what they're offering on the home to make sure that the deal stays together. That's
Okay.
another thing that happens with appraisals if the house price is going, kind of crazy above
Yeah, some of them
asking.
get to be insane bidding wars. That can you top this? And they keep coming back higher and higher. And the seller sits there, oh, hey, that's great.
Yeah.
Go around one more once.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're saying with what you can get into a situation, is they can bid this thing beyond the point that the bank will say, hey, we ain't going to touch this one.
Yeah, we're not going to give you that much money. Yeah.
We can't cover that kind of money. And that gets to be interesting because really what they're telling the potential buyer is you're in over your head and you're going to get yourself into trouble if anything goes wrong.
Yeah, you're going to have to pay that cash difference between the appraisal and the price that you're giving on the home. But if they want the home bad enough, they will do it.
Yeah.
Unless you're like, let's say you're buying a house for $500,000 and you're only borrowing $200,000, you're putting $300 down, then it's really not much of an issue. But when you're borrowing quite a bit, it is.
If it's your second house or something like that, you've got significant money down, and so you can take the risk.
Yep.
Yeah. And I know I had a young lady working for me one time that she and her husband had a house up in New Hampshire, and they got extremely nervous when the house across the street from them was exactly like their house, and it sold for less than what they were owed on their mortgage.
Oh.
And this is back quite a few years when the housing market really went the other way dramatically. So, and again, I guess it depends on the area that you get one of these developments and they build it up pretty fast and the prices are kind of on the pricey side. And then all of a sudden the market turns a little bit and, well, we don't need that many houses or the market isn't supporting it. So.
Kind of like the stock market, they usually come back though.
Yeah.
I mean, buying a home is still a pretty good investment to have, and over time it really is going to appreciate,
Yeah.
So, I still think it's a great investment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The other half of the game I get wound up on too is I've gone through the numbers that if I bought gold bars back in 1967 when I bought the house, they would not have appreciated as fast as my house.
As your house.
Even though gold is up over $2,000 an ounce right now.
Yep.
So the real estate market is, in the right areas, it is spectacular. And Beverly is one of them, I know for sure.
For sure.
And the other half of the game is real estate tax is based on the assessed value of your house. And if I had a gold bar, I could take off a slice and sell it and pay off the taxes on it.
Yep.
But take a shovel full of dirt out of my backyard, there's no
Not the
market for
same
that.
thing. Definitely not.
So that's one of the other downsides that makes me nervous when they start talking about taxing wealth. Yeah, it gets to be kind of fuzzy.
Yep.
Yeah, but so you're in the business. You've got your own business. You're based on the people you know,
Yep.
the organizations you belong to.
Yep.
Besides WOAMTEC, what else?
Currently, I am the president of the PBD Rotary Club. I'm on a 2-year plan right now. I love my Rotary Club. They're great. I am also been a long-term member of the PBD Area Chamber of Commerce. I grew up in PBD. I live in Danvers currently, but I do a lot of stuff in PBD. Let's see, I belong to another group called Women's Business League. That's another women's group like WOAMTEC.
How is that different than WOAMTEC?
It's a lot bigger than WOAMTEC. WOAMTEC is, I started, I believe, in California, but I don't think there's many chapters in this area. Women's Business League has quite a few chapters in the area.
You know, I had Lisa on the discussion one time, and she was telling me it's mostly Texas and Florida, as she knows, and this one in Beverly is the only one in I think, north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah. It's a great group, though. We have some awesome women in WOAMTEC. I really enjoy going to the group every week. I was president of North Shore Women in Business. That's been around since 1984. Last year, when I was president, we changed the name to North Shore Women Connect to make it more inclusive, because a lot of people didn't think they could come to us because they didn't own their own business. Okay. So we just had our first annual conference last week, which we had almost 200 people at. Oh, wow. And that's been a really great, it's been excellent to be part of that. So I went from president to vice president, so I'm still like on the board and stuff, but it's been really great to see that flourish and do really well. So that's how I get my business. I get my business from people I know, referrals, people that have worked with me before. I have a certification called a senior real estate specialist. So I love working with seniors. I kind of have a little spot in my heart for seniors. I've worked with a lot of them in the past and helped them move out of their homes where they, had all their children and everything grow up, and then the house just gets too big. And they need to downsize. So a lot of them go to condos, or they might go to, Florida, North Carolina, or something like that. But I really enjoy doing that.
Yeah. There was an article recently that where do people go to retire? And Carolinas was probably one of the big ones.
Yep.
Surprised me New Jersey was on the list.
New Jersey was?
Yeah.
Really?
I guess coming out of New York City, New Jersey is a
true
kind of thing, and so Texas was another big one. Surprised me.
Really?
In Florida, yeah. So, yeah, that was another interesting one too. That a lot of people decide, okay, I'm going to retire in some place warm and sunny.
Yep.
And they end up in Florida or Texas, Arizona. I think maybe Arizona and New Mexico, I forget which one might have been on the list too. And after a while, they get the position of, well, geez, where's the kids, And you got grandkids, and I haven't seen them in months and all this kind of thing. So pretty soon, they're looking to come back. Do you ever run into any of them?
What I'm seeing more often than that is that people are moving in with their parents, or having their parents move in with them in like an in-law situation. Yeah. I was talking to a contractor early today, and he said that he's doing a ton of additions onto homes for in-law apartments. So they're becoming very popular. People are going back to, living with their families again, my sister just retired and moved down to Fort Myers, and I went to go visit her last week. And there was a lot of people down in Fort Myers that were from Massachusetts. And they have their families. It's an over 55 community, but they can still have their family come. And there was some grandkids there and stuff that were visiting. So that was nice. But I am seeing a lot of in-laws. A lot of people are doing that now, or looking for it. Yeah. If you have a house to sell that has an in-law unit, you're probably going to sell pretty quickly because they're very desirable. Yeah.
Well, I guess that requires a modification to the zoning in different areas. I know Beverly is going through it now. ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units, that they're talking about doing it, and it's getting some pushback. I'm surprised that some of the neighbors say, that means more cars in the neighborhood, and that gets to be another issue. What does it take to really get one of these things through the administrations and through the zoning and all that? And not in my backyard pops up an awful lot of times when you're trying to do something. That it's a little different. So.
Well, the population keeps increasing, right? That we don't really have any control over that. So, I mean, I don't know where that stance comes from. Too many cars in the neighborhood. It seems silly. I think it's nice that people want to live with their parents and they want to keep the family units intact. I think with all the mental health problems we're having in the world right now, especially through COVID, the more family that we can be around and be with, I mean, coming from a family of 10, I think family is great, and I don't know where I would be without my family. So, I don't know. I guess I don't understand that, but.
Yeah. So it's another wrinkle in the game, I guess. Some places allow ADUs and some don't. and some are encouraging them, and you get into these flaps like was it Milton that just voted down the governor's plan to add more affordable housing. Andrew, the friends that keeps pushing housing that is affordable is the difference. And that gets into another game we've had the discussion about. When you start to talk about affordable housing, it's a percent of the median income, and it turns out that it may be affordable for some people, but for a lot of more people, it's not affordable. And that's another issue that people that are working minimum wage or in the vibrant community kind of situation, where do they live? And do you ever get involved in this kind of? You mentioned earlier you were aware of Harbor Light. Yeah.
Yes, I've been to a few of those things as a realtor, and they've been in our organization with North Shore Women Connect. I haven't gotten a lot involved in that, but that's something that I definitely want to get more involved in as a broker. You know, it's funny, you know, I was saying to my sisters the other day that, you know, when we were growing up, $1 million home was like, oh my gosh, look at this $1 million home. Now $1 million home is really not as spectacular, you know? Really. I mean, you know, you said your house you bought a long time ago and is, you know, $1 million. So $1 million home is not what it used to be when we were growing up. So it's really difficult. And like how I sold a condo in Danvers last year, and a couple of my buyers were people that had kids that were in high school. Yeah. And they're buying the condos for them. They're going to rent them out and keep them so that when their kids get older, they have some place to go because they're worried about how are their children going to be able to buy a home.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had people here to discuss different things, and one of the points they made, well, I got my teacher's degree and I got a job teaching, and I had to get a roommate before we could afford an apartment.
Yep.
And that's the other half of this game, that it's a very one-sided and lopsided business. That, like you say, there's all these houses that are worth, you know, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. And as I mentioned before the show, that way back when, the ground rules when I was looking to buy a house was you never bought a house more than 1 year's salary. And you burst out laughing at that one.
Yep.
Because you do what?
Right.
So it's a different world. And, you know, wish you luck with it.
My daughter is 26 years old. She just graduated from Tufts University with her doctorate in physical therapy.
Oh, wow.
Her fiance is an engineer, and they're looking to move into Boston because she just got a job at MGH. The rents in Boston for a one-bedroom apartment are almost $4,000 a month.
Yeah.
So they're already saying, how are we going to do this, you know? Yeah. When you have college debt and everything else, it's a challenge.
Ladies and gentlemen, well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And as you can tell, this discussion can go on for quite some time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a difficult business to be in with the changes in the rates and everything else going on. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I mention every time, my email address is after the credits. If you've got some comments, send me an email. And if you want space here at the table, we can make that happen too. Thanks for joining us.